Thank you all for being here. We will now hear from candidates for District 21, North Dakota Legislature, both Senate and House candidates. We will be going to 6:55 with a 2-minute introduction and 1 minute for everyone to answer the questions asked on the cards, and then a 1-minute close at the end. We will get in as many questions as we can. We can't get everyone's question in, possibly, and it's also very possible you will hear something close to your question because we'll get the similar questions at the same time, and I have to do my best to pick out what seems to be the most popular topics at times. And so we will just start at this end and move down with each person starting anew with the next question, and we'll start with introductions and with candidate Carolyn Nelson.
Thank you, and good evening to those of you attending and to those watching on TV. I'm Carolyn Nelson, your current District 21 State Senator. I was first elected to this position in 1994, succeeding Tish Kelly and Herschel Lashkowitz. Senator Kelly and Senator Lashkowitz exemplified trust, caring, and leadership for the residents of Central Fargo. During my term as your senator, I have spent half of it in elected leadership positions, first as caucus chair and then as assistant minority leader. My main standing committees have been Judiciary and Government and Veterans Affairs. Both committees have a very wide range of topics affecting people. My most recent interim committees have been Higher Education Funding and the Legacy and Budget Stabilization Fund Advisory Board. I'm also a member of the Senate Memorial Committee, the Bowie Institute for Legislative Leadership Development Steering Committee, and the CSG 2015 Midwest Planning Committee. I moved to District 21 1 week before my 16th birthday. I graduated from Fargo Central and from NDAC, now NDSU. I retired from NDSU Math Department after 35 years and from church musician jobs after more than 25 years. I am currently serving my 4th and final year as president of the National Federation of Music Clubs, an advocacy group that advocates for American music, American musicians, and music education. I have a husband of 55 years and have raised 6 children, 3 of ours and 3 as guardians, and we have a total of 15 kids we call our grandkids. My primary concern is quality education for our entire populace, starting with Head Start and pre-K. We can solve a lot of the later life problems with proper early education. We have a lot of work to do on other things, such as inner city flooding, veteran services, human services, health care, tax relief. A supermajority does not serve you or the state. When the balance of power was better, communication was better, and we got a lot of things done. We need to return to those days. I look forward to your questions and the comments of the others on the panel. Thank you.
Thank you. We move next to candidate Cindy Pfeiffer.
Hello, everyone. I'm Cindy Pfeiffer, born in Lemoore, North Dakota. My dad was in the Air Force, so we traveled a lot. And then by the time we had our children, we moved back to Fargo, and we've been in District 21 for about 22 years. I wanted to thank also this is quite a nice crowd here, and thank you for coming, and also for those on the Public Access channel that are listening. Forgive me ahead of time if I'm not able to answer questions due to the length of time or to lack of knowledge. It's been a long campaign, and we've gone to a lot of doors. I'm almost at 5,000 doors, and I have 1,000 left, so it's not done yet. And I've listened to the opinions and the needs of the citizens, and also sometimes observed what they couldn't tell me, but you could see that they're suffering or they have a difficult life, and you try to figure out how you put yourself in that position to help, and to help in the legislature is what I'd really be honored to do. So I look forward to working in the 64th legislature. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now we will move to House candidates, starting with candidate Kathy Hogan.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters, and thank you for coming tonight. It's been my privilege to represent District 21 for the last 5 years. My husband Dennis and I have lived in District 21 for 43 years, And we raised our children in the Hawthorne neighborhood. In fact, our son continues to live in that neighborhood. We're pretty committed to the local area. During my years in District 21, I've volunteered in many, many capacities. I was a religious ed teacher at St. Anthony's. I led a Girl Scout troop starting in kindergarten, and they went all the way through their senior year. Served on lots of boards, the Girl Scout Board, the United Way Board, the Fargo Cass Public Health Board, actually 8 or 10 more, which I'm not going to list. And then in my professional life, I worked for 40 years in human services, the last 18 as the director of Cass County Social Services. These experiences really taught me a lot. They've taught me how to look at complex issues from different angles. I really learned that it's really critical to develop working relationships with people who have very different opinions and views, and that the best way to solve problems is to resolve conflicts by consensus. And during the legislature, we often do that. It doesn't make the media when that happens, but we often actually do that. When I'm elected, there are several key issues I plan to address. Improving behavioral health services is top of my list and a passion for several people in this room. Expanding early childhood services is critical. We have to appropriately fund education from K to 12 and higher education and address the facility problems, particularly at NDSU. We really need to consider eliminating the income tax on Social Security and veterans benefits, because we're one of the few states that still does that, and there's no need for us to do that. And we need to continue to lower our efforts to lower property tax. My goal as a legislator is to improve the lives of all North Dakotans, poor and rich, east and west, urban and rural, not just for today's generation, but for the next 10 generations. And we have to think and act wisely to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And we now move to candidate Robert Loff.
Well, thank you very much to the League of Women Voters for putting on this fantastic forum. Thank you to the District 11 candidates who came and spoke to you, regardless of not having anybody opposing them, which I think is just fantastic and shows commitment to the democratic process. And thank you to our opponents on the opposite side of the aisle. This is a fantastic way to engage the voters and hear a little more in depth about the issues that we're passionate about that maybe you don't get in a mailer or in a door-to-door experience, which might be quite short, or you might have been cooking dinner. So thank you so much for this fantastic event. I'm very excited to be here and kind of hear from you and what issues you're passionate about. But I'm also excited to talk a little bit about myself. And I'd like to formally introduce myself. I'm Robert Loff. I'm a lifelong North Dakotan, a fourth-generation NDSU Bison, one of the first generations to not be a Hall of Fame athlete, so really did the family proud there. I'm very committed to my passion. My lifelong passion is North Dakota. And whether that was during my time at NDSU, where I was fortunate enough to be selected as a United States Senate Youth Program member, which is for those dedicated to lives in public service, or the Harry S. Truman Scholarship Program for the 50 top students in the United States dedicated to lives in public service, or during my time 2 years ago, where I was fortunate enough to be a student advocate and fight for the rights of students as a North Dakota State University governmental relations executive, which had me in Bismarck testifying on legislation. It's very important to all of us, such as capital projects for NDSU, college affordability, which is a staple of what we need in this district. And also, following that, I was fortunate enough to serve as student body president at North Dakota State University, where I worked with the tumultuous State Board of Higher Education during some times you might have read about in the newspaper, which Kathy eloquently states that sometimes you don't hear about the good things, you hear about the bad, but we had to work with the good and the bad during that time. And following that, I was fortunate enough to make the decision to run with the fantastic District 21 candidates Cindy and Lucas, where we've been working hard to reach out to the voters and hear what's truly passionate for them. Because District 21 is changing. It's not the same place that it has been for a long time. There are different demographics. There are people, new Americans coming to district, as well as a thriving youth community that need to be represented. And it's my opportunity to represent those individuals and to hear from you what you're passionate about, and talk about not only what the next 10 years of North Dakota look like, but the time after the oil boom, the time where prosperity needs to be made permanent. And with that, I thank you very much for your attendance. I look forward to hearing some of your questions and being able to provide feedback. And if unable to answer a question during this time, our cell phone and our email is kind of plastered around the district right now, and please feel free to give me a call, as many of you have been doing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'd like to remind all of the candidates to get the microphone within 6 inches of yourself, please.
That was me.
And now, candidate Lucas Paper.
So you can hear this then?
Yes.
So we're good there? Okay. Well, first off, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Lucas Paper. Currently, I am a member of the North Dakota Air National Guard as a security forces officer up in Minot, North Dakota. I'm a student at NDSU, and I'm also a lifelong member of District 21. I decided to run in District 21 because growing up here, I saw that there was a lot of need in our district. I have a little bit different perspective than most in that I grew up in one of the most impoverished neighborhoods in the district, right over by community homes. And growing up there and really becoming good friends with the new American families that are putting down roots and beginning to understand the things that they go through while also going to community centers and school with them, I saw that they really do have a large hill to climb. And it's something that I became very passionate about. I'm still very good friends with them till this day. I also believe that will be a good representative for this district because I feel a calling to serve. For me, joining the military was something that I felt very strongly that I could do to give back to the community that has done so much for me and that has given me so much. I come from a single-family household where my dad was a tradesman and he raised 4 kids on his own on a fairly low income budget. And I saw what he could do through his hard work and through his tenacity in raising us kids to give us a better life. And I just, I want to exemplify that from him. And I believe I can do that by supporting our district in the legislature through investments in education, which has given me so much and given me the ability to be where I am today, coming from a single-family household, a single-parent household. Supporting investments in our infrastructure, and also supporting something I feel very strongly about, pre-K education. I think starting with a good foundation is something we can do to ensure that our children have the education that they need. With that, I look forward to answering your questions, and thank you very much.
Thank you. And now we move to candidate Mary Schneider.
Well, thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting this opportunity. Thank you all for attending, and thank you to those who view this now and later. You're in my district, District 21, the heart of Fargo. It has so many wonderful things going for it. I was born here and graduated from NDSU. I have a law degree from Emory University in Atlanta, and I have an international law degree from the National University of Ireland in Galway. Before becoming an attorney, I was a police officer, a special deputy clerk of court, a case worker with people less privileged than I, but typical of our district. I've been able to serve on many boards, including the FM Community Theater Board, the Mental Health Association Board, Seroptimus, and the YWCA Board. I've enjoyed working with the Fargo Public Schools in a number of ways, including PTA president and chair of junior grade books. As an attorney and executive director for the last 24 years of Legal Services of Northwest Minnesota and Legal Services of North Dakota as a managing attorney before that, I developed programs that directly impacted the lives of working families, women, abuse victims, children, seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities. I'm part of a 4-generation Schneider family whose members all lived in District 21. Many of them worked and helped out at the Schneider Law Firm, one of the many small businesses that are in our district. We bought our house here in 1978 and haven't moved in the last 36 years. I'm running for office because I think I have the combination of experiences, education, and leadership to assess and address the needs of District 21, which is very diverse in its composition and has a lot of wonderful issues and people to deal with. I will share the bounty and the prosperity that now seems to be sitting in Bismarck in the oil revenues and funds therefrom, and I'll get that money out to the people who need it, both in the form of infrastructure and in tax cuts and in basic needs and services. With my teammates, Kathy and Carolyn, we've developed a special program to make education affordable at the highest level for our students in this district as well. We are concerned about the needs of the people in our district, all of our people, and we we will work together to see that they are served in the best way possible. Thank you.
Thank you. We will start now with questions. We will start with candidate Pfeiffer, and I'm combining some questions here related to pre-K and beyond funding. Do you support full funding for pre-K, and what is your opinion of a comprehensive state education plan that encompasses preschool through post-secondary?
Yes, I support pre-funding. I noticed in my studies that the legislature has heavily funded education. They're the ones that pay for all the education in the state of North Dakota, up to 80%, to keep the levy mills low. So I feel that education is very important. And also it's the way of the future. With the educated workforce, we can eliminate a lot of the problems in our society. So I'm very for education and would stand behind it.
Thank you. Candidate Hogan?
Thank you. I think pre-K is a critical aspect of a range of early childhood services. And pre-K is one of them, Head Start is one of them. Screening and mental health behavioral services are another. Parent nurses is another component. We need a comprehensive vision for preschool early childhood services. Pre-K really makes a difference. The research shows that if children come to school and start kindergarten ready to learn, they do better throughout their entire lives. And so funding for pre-K is a good investment. We tried to get it in the last session, but regretfully, we didn't get any funding. Local districts can offer it and fund it on their own, but we don't have state funding. With the current resources, I think this should be a priority.
Thank you. Candidate Law?
Absolutely. Pre-K funding has been proven in many different studies to have exponential benefits for students throughout their educational experience, all the way to college. I do believe over this past legislative session, biennium 2013-2015, there's a $20.7 million investment in early childhood education, which was a 240% increase over the session before. So I do believe there was some funding. And then there was also a study bill passed to look into early childhood education, which I believe we should take very seriously the findings of and recommend them to be passed in the next legislative session. So there is funding. It is not enough. We need to continue to work on it. We need to take very seriously the findings of our studies and see the best way to implement it, not only on the local level, but also look at long-term plans of how we can expand all of our educational access, whether that's through affordable education or higher education, or many different aspects. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I look forward to working on it this next legislative session.
Thank you. Candidate Paper?
Yes, I would have to agree that I would definitely would like to look into the pre-K funding pre-K education and all the way through post-secondary. I think the most important thing, and I mentioned it during my intro, was that to start a good education, you have to start with a good base. And I think that is rooted directly in pre-K education. As Robert said, there is actually funding for our pre-K. That $20.7 million has gone to pre-K, or that's special childhood pre-K. But what he didn't mention was that North Dakota has also given $650,000 to a Gearing Up for Kindergarten program that has been enjoyed by over 58 communities in our state. And those range all the way from very small communities up to Bismarck. So we are doing great things in North Dakota to help with early childhood development, and I think we should continue to do so moving forward. And if and when I'm elected, I will help support that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Schneider?
I absolutely support funding for pre-K education from 3 to 5 because we understand what that does. It gives kids a head start in life and it affects our expenses in school. There's less need for special education and there are positive outcomes all through life. But I really wanted to be clear that last time this issue came up, the supermajority in the legislature voted it down. They even initially voted down the kindergarten for special needs children as well. Children did not fare well in the last legislative session, which is one of the reasons I'm running. Women didn't either. But having pre-K will assist those who were also impacted by the very low funding for childcare in the state. Even though we knew how much money we needed, and $28 million was needed just for the city of Williston for the period of 5 years, the amount of child care funding was only $1.3 million. So we can talk a good talk, but It did not happen for children in the last legislative session. Even a very small bill that would have allowed kindergarten through third graders to have milk in school was defeated, even though it would have only cost $1.2 million in all our bounty. So our legislature has not been friendly to women and to children, and I would really like to change that. And that's one of the reasons I'm running today. I hope my opponents are able to implement 3 to 5 education if they get there, but their caucus tends to vote together, and they voted against that. I don't know if we have reason to expect that will change, and I think it's very important that you elect people who will see that it happens. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson.
Thank you. I think we have to realize this is not a one-term happening. Back when my children were small, we did not have universal kindergarten. Fargo had an unlimited mill levy, so we could provide kindergarten. Some of our children went to Methodist preschool because we did not have all of the things there. In 1986, we had to vote between would we put up an educational television tower out in western North Dakota, or would we provide for half-day kindergartens? So it's been a long battle. It isn't just something that came up. I think it's a shame that we have kids on a waiting list for Head Start. I think it's a shame that we're not screening as well as we should the children who are on the autism spectrum. They need services early. We have the funds to do it. I think we need to do it now.
Thank you. Move on to our next question, and this time we will start with candidate Hogan. How do you propose North Dakota deal with the lack of affordable housing across the state?
Affordable housing is a crisis, a clear crisis in the West, but it's also a crisis in this town. And we really see it when we go door to door. All of us see the housing crisis. People living in very rundown situations, often crowded, and it's almost a shame. It's the advantage, and in District 21 we see it. We really need a comprehensive plan for expansion and building. The money that was given in the last legislative session was spent in the first 6 months. We could have had 4 times as much, and we could have done affordable housing. Some of the housing projects in Williston have been beautiful and have been filled way before they were opened. We know we have a problem. We know we have the funding. We simply need to do it.
Thank you. Candidate Law.
Affordable housing it's an epidemic out in western North Dakota especially, and then here in eastern North Dakota, like Kathy stated, it is no easy feat as well. I think the biggest part of this comes to the fact that we don't have workers to build these projects, even if we do have these projects coming up. For every one unemployed person there is in North Dakota, there are 3 job openings. We don't have enough individuals educated in this state or brought into this state to fill the jobs that we have. And when that comes down to it in western North Dakota, we have building projects, and I work in real estate development in western North Dakota, where we have building projects put off for 6, 8, 1 year to start. And the cities alone, Williston alone, its cities are unable to get through the process of approval for these projects for 3-4 months at a time. So we have a large local issue in western North Dakota as well, and we need to make sure that our cities are able to process these projects and make sure they get them implemented in a timely manner, because although we're having lots of fantastic things going in western North Dakota, it doesn't do us very good if there's a person who's trying to attend college at Williston State College and rent is $1,600 a month. It costs as much for them to attend college as it does for them to pay to live. So it's an epidemic. We need to be doing more. We need to be investing in our educational infrastructure to get individuals in here to work on these projects. And at the same point, we need to double down on our emphasis to provide infrastructure funding for western North Dakota. And I think that we have a long ways to go on this issue.
Thank you. Candidate Paper.
Yeah, thank you for the question. This is something that I've seen firsthand, actually, being a member of the Air National Guard out west. I have many friends who work out in the Air Force out there who are paying for their 2-3-bedroom apartments and it's upwards of $2,000 to $2,500 for their apartments, and they don't make a lot, and so that's a really big issue. But I think it all goes back to the local control. And when you really look at it, you hear about the mayors out in Williston and the mayors out in Minot not allowing those building permits, and we need to make sure that we are both taking care of the people that we have, but also enticing more people to come here and work. We cannot build what we do not have the workers to build, and I think that that is extremely, extremely important. As far as housing out here in North Dakota, or out here in the eastern part of the state, I'm actually also a realtor here in town with Hatch Realty, and I see there is more, the real estate market right now is booming. People are buying homes and selling homes and building homes, and for an example of that, you can look out to West Fargo. They can't put homes out fast enough. And so I think as far as affordable housing goes, we do need to concentrate out west and make sure that they are taken care of. But ultimately, it's an issue of workers and making sure we attract more workers to this state with our jobs.
Thank you. Candidate Schneider.
I think it's an issue of money and political will. The western counties asked for assistance, and it wasn't forthcoming from the last legislature. A special session was requested, and it wasn't approved. We know we have issues with affordable housing in the western part of the state, and the past legislature and the supermajority in it failed to deal with those. I believe that it is not necessarily an issue of workforce. I think that if we have a call for building and we have the funds to build, people will come. But I do think in recruiting a workforce long-term that we need to do some things that other states have when they wanted to build their available employees. We could be partnering at the high school level between job seekers and job providers, as they do in Minnesota, pairing up to create the workers of the future. We should have our children engaged in technology from the early years in school, and we should be partnering with other states to bring students that we need for our workforce into our communities. One of the things our team would do, and I would do, to attract people to our state, to expand our workforce, is to have 0% student loans at our universities, to increase greatly our grants and scholarships, to have a foundation endowment for providing those in perpetuity to students who come. And I would provide for loan consolidation and payback for the workers that we need to come into our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson.
I think one of the key words here is affordable. There are 115 households right now at Park East who in the next 6 to 12 months will be looking for affordable housing here in Fargo. Where is it? Will it be downtown? Will it be close to medical facilities and those types of things? This is because of a flood levy. It's not their choice to lose. But yet their rent was raised recently because, quote, of the market. Keep track or keep in pace with the market. Now, it's not just something that's happening out in western North Dakota with affordable housing. I'm lucky I'm not on crutches tonight because one of the cement steps at one of our houses that we were door knocking at collapsed on me. I teased the forum today saying, you know, maybe you should go do a story about all the different front steps of the houses in the different parts of our district. Do they live up to code? There are a lot of things that are impacting here, and the word affordable is one of those nebulous things that to some $1,000 a month is affordable, but to a number of the people who live where I live, it's not affordable.
Thank you. Candidate Pfeiffer.
Both sides are very important, but also with our great North Dakota unemployment rate at 2.4%, we can't socially intervene in everything. We can't be everything to every person. The $3,000 rents that I've seen from some people that moved from Bismarck, the oil area to North Dakota, they came here to find that their rent was $900. So we can't control the market either, totally. We can just offer our assistance. I think my voice went out.
Keep going.
We can just offer our assistance in the best way possible and do many things to make our business more attractive in our state by keeping the taxes down and not forcing mandates on people, letting the free market also take care of itself. So those would be my points to add.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next question, where a question is submitted specifically for candidate Loft, and that is a right that you all have if you want to submit a question for a particular candidate. We'll start with you, but everybody gets a chance to answer. Will you support a reduction in the oil extraction tax?
I do not believe that this last legislative session, the issue of the oil extraction tax was handled, and I do not believe there needs to be further reduction.
Thank you. Candidate Paper?
I believe this is an issue that's been just over-politicized and just kind of put through the ringer. These issues such as, no, I'll answer it simply. No, I would not support that. I would support freezing it where it is, but I would not support lowering it. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Schneider?
This was an issue of contention in the last legislative session. The Republicans in the Senate voted unanimously to cut the oil extraction tax by 30%, despite the fact that it would not fund pre-K, would not fund milk in schools, would not fund other requests of essential services. I would never agree to a reduction in the oil extraction tax at a point where we had people who were in need of basic assistance, in need of affordable housing, in need of benefits for their children, and other issues. But I think it showed that in combination with a decision to give back money to corporations, 83% of which were out of state, that the last legislature had more concern for special interests than they did for the special needs of their people, and I would certainly like to change that.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson?
As long as there are needs for North Dakota, I don't think we should do anything with the extraction tax.
Thank you. Candidate Pfeiffer?
I wouldn't do anything with the tax. I keep on hearing her twice that she said about the milk money, and that they already give the children 2 pints of milk. The contented part was for 1 more pint of milk, which was too much for children that age. I've worked with the school, and that's what the educators told me. So let's make that clear, that the Republican Party is not the heartless party. We're the ones that have funded education. We've paid for the diversion. We've paid for the so many services that we offer. My family received about $1,200 in reduction of house taxes, and we live in a very small home. And so I feel that we have to look at things carefully and not accuse the party that's been serving the state as dutifully as possible with as much heart as possible. So I feel that it has to be really brought into consideration.
Thank you. Candidate Hogan?
Thank you. The oil is really a one-time harvest. And the question was, do we lower that tax when we know we're only going to take it out once? Now, we have done a lot of work to save in various funds, the Legacy Fund and the Stabilization Fund. We have saved a lot of the money that comes out of the oil extraction tax. But the discussion was, well, if we don't lower the tax, will oil development slow down? Well, that hasn't happened because oil development has continued at the same level, if not grown. So we didn't need to reduce the tax, and it's a one-time harvest, and our challenge is to make wise investments, both in our people and in our infrastructure and in savings, so that that one-time harvest is used wisely. And I strongly would oppose a reduction in the oil extraction tax.
Thank you. We will start the next question with candidate Paper. The median income for District 21 is only $28,000 for a family of 4. Do you support an increase in the minimum wage?
This is something that hits very close to home for me. My father only made $30,000 when he was raising 4 kids in this district, and so I understand what it means to be raised in a family that makes that much money. The minimum wage, I would not support raising the minimum wage because I believe that the market is going to take care of itself. If employers and small businesses and large businesses, for that matter, find it beneficial to raise these minimum wages so that their people can enjoy a little bit more wage. I think that is how it should be. I don't believe that raising the minimum wage is going to incentivize any more work. I think we need to make sure that education is accessible. I think we need to make sure that people are able to go to college for a first generation like myself. Not everybody can join the military and have that pay for college, but being able to make that affordable and being able to get people out of the crux of poverty is something I feel very, very strongly about, and that is the way we increase people's wages, not by federally or mandating it in the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Schneider?
I would support an increase in the minimum wage. In our district, particularly, about 50% of people who live here are in poverty. And we can't say that has no connection to the minimum wage. We can't say that has no connection to being able to provide for families. I also know that the minimum wage adversely impacts women. And if we do make an increase in the minimum wage, that increased earnings can go to support families and children as well. I think it's important that we set a threshold, and if everyone is paying above that, that's wonderful. That's great for our state. But for those who are working in one or two jobs at minimum wage today, the increase in minimum wage will make a huge impact upon their families, and I certainly would support it.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson?
For many years, I supported a living wage that was respectable for all. And then a couple of years ago, I believe we passed a bill that tied our minimum wage to the feds. And I think that's still what it is. And, you know, if it goes up to $10.10 an hour, that would move us to $10.10 an hour. But we'd have to change that particular law. The one thing I do think needs to get looked at is what we pay our service workers. Some of them don't fall under the minimum wage laws, and I think that some of the wages we pay those people is just not respectable at all.
Thank you. Candidate Pfeiffer?
I feel if we lower the taxes on businesses, then they would be able to offer health insurance and also pay higher wages to their employees. I don't feel it has to be mandated by the government. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. Candidate Hogan?
Thank you. I strongly support efforts to protect all workers. I think that raising the minimum wage makes sense. We did lower the corporate income tax significantly during the last session, and it really did not have a significant impact on particularly service workers and the people who live in our district. I think that there are a lot of labor issues that are creating major problems in this state at this point in time. In the West, a lot of employers are using, rather than employment relationships, they're using a thing called independent contractors. And they're not paying following the Fair Labor Standards Act and the necessary requirements. So I think the protection of workers is something that we need to really focus on, because workers have not been actively protected, and raising the minimum wage would raise all boats. Lowering corporate income tax did not really have an impact on the low-end salaries. And so in theory, it makes sense, but in practice, it hasn't happened.
Thank you. For our next question, we will start with candidate
I believe.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
For everybody here,
sorry.
I think I'm supposed to. No problem. Absolutely.
I get in a hurry and think ahead. I have to think ahead, and sometimes I forget where I am.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're talking a little bit about a micro level issue. So first, the median income in our district is $28,000. That's the real problem.
Mm-hmm.
How that is acceptable is just beyond me. So we're not going to raise that by having people working at minimum wage jobs. And that's what's frustrating for me in this conversation. In Western North Dakota, you can get paid $16 an hour to work at Taco Bell. That's it costs a lot to live there as well, but these are opportunities that are happening in Western North Dakota. Here, it is not the case. In District 21, we have people who are impoverished without lack of education to get them in positions where they can create their own company, where they can thrive under innovation, where they can work for corporations that they can get living wages off of, not because it was mandated by the government, which then increases the cost of inflation, but they get living wages because they have jobs that will sustain a family. Nobody's going to ever sustain a family off a minimum wage, because then the market will correct itself, and then that will be a lower paid wage again. So we're not talking about the real problem here. It is not about a minimum wage. It's about creating an educational infrastructure and a support system for the people of District 21, where we aren't continually raising the small amount they're paid and then inflating the prices so that then they don't afford anything again, but we're creating jobs that will allow them to raise their families. And that's why I believe this question is just incorrect when it's connected to $28,000 minimum standard. If we want to raise it to a large amount, we can make it $100,000 average and median in our district really quickly, but that's not going to reflect the amount that it is for inflation and for the cost of living in our district.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I must say, I do that every time. And now, this will have to be our final question before 1 minute close. This has been directed specifically at candidate Schneider. It is fairly likely that the Republican Party will maintain its supermajority after this election. Do you agree with any of the policies supported by the Republican supermajority last session? And I suppose the Republicans on the panel can choose to answer that as they wish.
Well, with many of the things that were passed that I think were important, reductions in property tax being one, and permission for local school districts to do 3 to 5 and so forth, I appreciate the outcome in the level that it was. But for almost every positive action that was taken on behalf of the needs of the people in the state, the Democrats had proposed something better and higher and more expansive and more directed to the needs of the people. So it's not that I don't like any of the outcomes, but the outcomes could have been so much better with greater leadership in the legislature.
Thank you. Candidate Nelson.
Well, I need to congratulate the Republicans because they passed some of the bills that were our ideas several sessions ago. You know, sometimes it just takes a little while for things to sink in, and it finally did on some issues. So I think that, yes, we do. You hear about the times that we sit and argue with everyone, but most of the time, we can sit and work things out so that it isn't just their bill. I mean, yeah, they've got the supermajority, but take a look at some of those bills that passed. The score might have been 46-1. They weren't all 33-14 in the Senate. Many of them were bipartisan bills, and we took as much interest in those bills and as much caring for you as they did. And I think you need to realize that.
Thank you. Candidate Pfeiffer.
I feel that so many of the bills were done together with both parties working really well together, and that we have to recognize that on many issues we're very close and we carry the same desire to help our constituents and to take care of the district. There are a few differences too that when we look back at when the Democratic Party was in power, which looks like the good old days to them, but we saw our towns were losing population, and a lot of businesses were lower. And I feel that since the majority has been there, there's been a much better increase in what we could offer the state. We have a robust state, which is the desire of the nation, and it came under Republican leadership and people who really put their necks out to make things happen for this state. And my feeling is I wish people would see the care that's behind that. It's both parties that care, but also the leading party really did try to fund the schools and to fund the construction in the oil area, to protect the spills, to clean up as much as possible. And I feel that they've done a very good job at it, and I'm happy for what they've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Hogan.
Actually, I have something I'm very proud of the Republicans for. It's Medicaid expansion. Mm-hmm. And when we voted this in, it was a very interesting vote for those legislators who were here. And it was a very bipartisan issue, and we are one of the few red states, primarily Republican states in the Midwest that actually expanded Medicaid to allow low-income adults to have access to health care. And I don't think I was ever prouder of North Dakota than the day we voted on that. And so that's an item that I definitely agreed with.
Thank you, Candidate Law.
Well, since this question's a little bit odd for us Republicans on the panel, I'll say I got to question what North Dakota, my opponents, do live in, though. I think there are 49 other states who would be very pleased to be in the position that we are. And I believe there are 80%, is the polls, of North Dakotans who think we're on the right track. 80%. The politics of prosperity are very interesting, and I'm finding that very funny, because the argument that they're making is that we funded the largest in history with K-12 education at $1.8 billion last legislative session. Their argument, that could have been $1.81 billion. In next session, what it probably is a Republican supermajority, when Senator Tim Flacco on the Education Committee proposed a $2 billion session, when that passes, I can guarantee the headlines from Democrats. That could have been a $2.1 billion budget. But we deal with reality, because Republicans in this state have had to govern and have had to make decisions. And I think it's very odd that for every amount that they may state, or every issue that is, it could have been another dollar more, or the tax decrease could have been a different way. So I'm interested in focusing on three major things while I'm there. I haven't been able to state them yet, which is permanent flood protection, which the Republican legislature funded their portion. Now it's down to the local government to make their decisions. It's a large-scale income cap and property tax reductions, because we should be the most tax-friendly state in the nation, and also make it the most fine education system in the nation, including higher education as well, making sure that we have the most affordable higher education system in the nation, as we currently do, and fighting to keep students in state. I am part of a generation, the first in a long time, where we graduated in North Dakota State here, and we want to stay here. That is because of Republican leadership, and that is going to continue to happen under Republican leadership.
Thank you, Candidate Paper.
Yeah, this is definitely an odd question for us to answer, and I think that I'll answer it just by stating some of the accolades that North Dakota has had here in the past couple years. We have the fastest growing economy in the nation 4 years in a row, according to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis. Strongest per capita, per person income growth, 6 years running. The fastest growing population in the nation. We created 116,000 new jobs since 2000. We have the lowest income in the nation, 5 years in a row. Highest? Oh, excuse me. Oh, yeah, I read that. I can't read, apparently. That was unemployment, excuse me. And the list goes on and on. The most content state, all of these things, as well as the most trusted government. All of these things point directly to sound leadership. The Republicans have done a fantastic job leading our state, and I think they will continue to do so. A supermajority or not, our opponents have stated multiple times that we do work together. And there are things that we can do together to make sure that this state is better than it was now. We need to ensure that the prosperity of today is bled into the prosperity of tomorrow, and that the students of this state, the young people of this state, as Robert had said, stay in this state and are proud to be part of North Dakota. And I think that culture is being built right now. And I think if we continue to do what we're doing, it'll continue to be built in the coming years.
Thank you. We now move to our 1-minute closing, and it just happens that we start once again with Candidate Nelson.
Well, thank you very much. Experience, leadership, and dedication, I think I bring these traits to this ticket. They have been the theme of our campaign. Starting back in my early days at what was then known as NDAC, I was in student government, Panhellenic Council. When my children were growing up, I was active in Roosevelt Elementary PTA, Ben Franklin PTA, North High PTA. And then they convinced me that perhaps I should run for the Fargo Board of Education. Well, I'd done that once before, and I lost. I found out I had a lot to learn, and so I used that PTA experience to learn, so that the second time I ran, 10 years later, which was in the mid-'80s, I could be elected to the Fargo Board of Education, where I served for 6 years. When they threatened to use my first grandson as a pawn in the negotiations between the teachers and the school boards, I decided it was time for me to leave there and to be in the House of Representatives and then on to the State Senate. Add to those things the NDSU alumni, the Arts Partnership, and other community activities, services over the last 3 years. I hope I have built your confidence and that you will vote for me on November 4th. During the early vote, which starts next Monday and runs through Friday, or by absentee ballot. You're lucky to have 3 different ways. Again, I want to thank you all for coming and thank the sponsors, the League of Women Voters, and also to thank Cable One for showing this to the people who could not be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Pfeiffer?
Thank you so much for taking your time with us. When I grew up in North Dakota, we lived on a farm with my grandparents sometimes when my father was away to places we couldn't go in the Air Force. And I always felt that North Dakota was a safe place to raise a family. And as we had our children originally at Hawthorne School, then we moved closer to Jefferson. And I volunteered with the PTA also with vision screening and with fundraisers. And then also I worked with the New Americans that came to our state doing Ambassador for Peace work and awarding people in the city for their worthy causes that they've done. And I really feel a deep desire to help in our state. And I feel that also there's a proponent of it that has to go also with human responsibility, that as we exert our effort, great things also come back to us. And I'm aware that there's some people that can't give as much as the rest of us, and those people need our help in our state. And I know that this is one area that will have to be worked on when we're in the legislature. And so thank you for taking your time with us, and for the new people that are on the board here. And I'm anxious to learn more about the issues and the way that I can help. So have a good night.
Thank you. Candidate Hogan?
Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's been wonderful to see a friendly face so interested in public policy. You know, I want to briefly talk about Democrats and Republicans, and you know, really, Democrats and Republican leadership don't create economic conditions. The droughts of the 1980s, the crisis North Dakota went through, was really outside our control. And the economic benefits of oil is really a gift to everyone. Republicans and Democrats all get that gift. And as a community, I think we are challenged to figure out, how do we use these resources wisely for the benefit of everyone? And that's an interesting challenge. I really feel privileged to serve because our district is very unique. We have a lot of people who live in poverty. We have lots of new Americans. We have a lot of seniors and veterans. We have homeless shelters. We have lots of halfway houses. District 21 is the most urban district in the state. And I feel like I have the experience and the knowledge to try to speak on their behalf when other people do not understand that. And that's why I feel like I'm called to serve, and I'm privileged to serve, and I hope that you'll continue by voting for me.
Thank you. Candidate Law?
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting on this fantastic event, for our fantastic people on this panel. Our opponents are you know, we may disagree on certain things, but they're very great people, and got to meet them throughout this experience. I've had a great time talking to the people of our district. I want to take a very quick 10,000-foot view of where I feel our place in society is, in the world right now, is here in Fargo. So we live in the most prosperous time in the history of this planet. And we live in the nation that has the most successful economy and the most individual freedoms of any nation in the world. And we live in a state which is experiencing economic successes and personal successes that are unrivaled in every other state in this nation. And we're living in the city which is the cultural and economic capital of that state. Think of what a special time we have and how we should be working forward to make sure that this prosperity is not momentary, it is permanent. And I believe that I offer the ability to look beyond the next 10 years, beyond the next 50 years, beyond while I'm here, beyond oil, beyond all these different factors which have brought us to this point, and make sure that we are taking the time to have all voices heard from different varieties of experiences and make politics of prosperity permanent here in North Dakota. I believe that's done by creating the world-class educational system, which we can do while having the most tax-friendly state in the nation, while providing permanent flood protection so that all these investments that we can have are permanent and will be here for a long time. I'm very excited to meet each and every one of the District 21 voters. I know we've been working very hard, all of us, all 6 of us, and that's just fantastic. And I believe that whatever decision they make, we're in good hands here in North Dakota, and I very much appreciate your vote.
Thank you. Candidate Paper?
Yes, again, thank you for the League of Women Voters for putting this on. Thank you for everybody that came. and also for our opponents here as well. I would just like to speak for a second on why I believe what I believe. I get asked the question a lot when I'm at the door, like, hey, you're very young to be doing this. Is this something that you were pushed into by your family, or something you were pushed into in some other way? And I said, no, this is something that I felt a calling to do. I did not come from a position that many would think I would be where I am today. My family did not have a lot of money. A lot of the times we slept in the same room, and it was an interesting situation to say the least. But what brought me here and what makes me a Republican is seeing that my dad, working at minimum wage, saw that he could make more for his children and for himself by getting an education, by going into the trades, and by making good money so that he could support us, so that we would have a life that we weren't able to have while he was working minimum wage. I think these are the ideals that and the experiences that I can bring to the legislature. I don't only work with the people who went through this and live next to the people who are low income. I went through it and I lived it. And these are the things that these experiences, coupled with all of my experiences within the military, within college and what have you, make me uniquely qualified to represent this district. And I really think that I'll be the best to go out to Bismarck to do that. So again, thank you so very much for coming and listening to me drone on, and have a fantastic night.
Thank you. Candidate Schneider.
Thank you all for coming and for being a part of the political process. Thank you to our viewers, too, who will see this later, and thank you to the League of Women Voters to give us a chance to have this discourse. Thank you to my fellow panel members, too. My team has been so supportive and wonderful, and I admire them greatly, and my opponents have been gentlemanly, and I appreciate your efforts, too. Since I was a child and took the bus from my home in Fargo down to downtown, I've loved this district, and I've loved the downtown, and the diversity of cultures and art and opportunity and entertainment that we have here. It's a very special district. And I want it to have what it needs to be able to expand and grow and include all of its people in prosperity. When you look downtown, you don't see the new Americans using the lovely little shops and restaurants. Where are they? We can include them, we can be more inclusive and allow them opportunities that they do not have now. A bill voted down in the last session, for instance, would have assisted them in setting up businesses which would make our district and our town even more exciting and more interesting. I have had a variety of experiences and leadership in many areas. I know law enforcement from having done it. I'm familiar with the court system. I've had to run a $2 million business that had 3 regional offices and 200 private attorneys. Did 5,000 legal cases a year. I will have good administration skills and good collaboration and team building skills as well. I've also been involved in a small business with my family and know some of the problems that small business owners have too. But if I'm elected, the most important thing I want to address is sharing the prosperity. We have literally billions of dollars sitting in funds in Bismarck that are not going to assist children with their educational and basic needs, that are not going to assist college students who need to graduate with less debt. We have the highest number of students graduating with debt in the nation, and we want to change that for our students, to keep them in the state and to educate them and to bring in new blood to a new workforce. Sharing the prosperity will also include infrastructure improvements, lowering property taxes, eliminating taxes on Social Security, military pensions, active duty pay, and establishing a renter's tax credit. We have a new opportunity for vision, and as the New York Times said, we are the luckiest state in the nation, and I want to make us the best state in the nation too, by caring for all of our people in ways that benefit all of us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. That was great.
Thank you to the league volunteers, to the city of Fargo, to all of our attendees, and especially the question writers. We will switch over to the next two districts as quickly as we can. Will the candidates just give us a chance to put their names down to where they're supposed to sit?